Welcome to the Empowered Wife Podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your husband's conscious effort so you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about 4 fail-safe secrets to a long and happy romance. My guest, Crystal's marriage was like a fairy tale right from the beginning. But 10 years in, she realized she was full of resentment and anger and felt only distance from her husband. Nor did she want to be respectful or appreciative or stop controlling her husband. She wanted him to be respectful and appreciative and stop controlling her. But she started to experiment anyway, and he mirrored back to her the way she was showing up. And now that deep resentment is gone, and they are best friends who laugh together a lot. She feels deeply loved. And then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which is about how divorce can be healthy and hopeful. I'll be making fun of that advice, so you don't want to miss that. All that's coming up. But first, I'm going to share 4 fail-safe secrets to a long and happy romance. If there really are surefire secrets to a long and happy romance, wouldn't you think somebody would write them down and teach them in every high school all over the world? Is there anything more important to learn in life than how to make your marriage last and thrive? I can't think of it. Couldn't they throw in a few tips about how your husband will react to certain things you do, alongside the part about how the elements on the periodic table will react to each other in chemistry class? It really is puzzling to me that the crucial elements of a lasting romance aren't passed along in schools, which is why most people don't know them, and therefore they continue to be secrets. I wish every woman knew these 4 simple secrets for having a long and happy romance, which I use every day. So here they are. Number 1, ask yourself this vital question every day. And you may have heard, as I did, that to have a successful marriage, you should focus on making your spouse happy. Be selfless. Sacrifice for him so he won't be so stressed and so burdened. But I say, forget about it. I mean, it might be good if you're a saint, maybe, but I'm definitely not. I'm just a mere mortal woman. And when I tried to do that, I got to be less saintly than ever, because I was so resentful. And I was also tired. And let's not forget, I was also not feeling appreciated for all the sacrifices I was making, which, by the way, he never asked me to make. I just thought that's what you were supposed to do for a long and happy romance, which I wanted so bad. Looking back, knowing what I know now, what I should have asked myself was not, how can I help him? But rather, what makes me happy? Sounds pretty selfish, right? But really, if I don't come up with a good answer to that question and act on it, in my experience, I'm going to become an unpleasant sourpuss. And that's not exactly virtuous either. The romances I've seen in the movies are never between one resentful sourpuss and a guy who is not sure why you've just come unglued when all he did was make himself a sandwich or turn on the TV. Number 2, talk to your other peeps. According to some studies, women use a lot more words than men, and that matches my experience. It makes sense. I'd need more listeners. The more connected I am with everyone I love, besides my husband, the more easily love seems to flow between us. As much as I know he loves me, my husband does not always hang breathlessly on every last detail about my day. Sometimes he's just trying to decompress from his day by staring at his phone, which is why I'm grateful to have besties and sisters I can chat and gossip with. Of course, I love talking to my husband, but when I was making him into my end-all, be-all, that was just too much pressure on one person. Number 3, become a great conversationalist by saying this. My husband and I started having a lot more great conversations when I started talking less and listening more. It wasn't easy to learn how to listen. Before that, I thought that listening was all about responding. So I was always just waiting for him to stop talking so I could tell him what I thought about things. I could give him my opinion, or else I was itching to give him advice or make a helpful suggestion. And sometimes I still do that. But most of the time, I'm grateful to have a powerful phrase that I rely on every day to remind me that I can just listen when he's talking. That phrase is, I hear you. I hear you. It helps me remember that I don't have to fix or help or do anything but bear witness. I used that phrase, I hear you, to just listen over lunch one day when he was telling me about his marathon training plans. And honestly, I am not very interested in marathon training plans. But you know what? It was his voice and his words and his ideas and his face. And he's my beloved. And I felt so connected. It's been incredible to experience the intimacy that comes when I just listen. Number 4, focus on what you want more of. Imagine if you started saying things like, thank you for working so hard to support our family. Or thank you for installing that security camera. You make me feel so safe. Or thank you for bringing me coffee this morning. That makes me so happy. All in one day. One of the things that students and coaches and I all do on the campus is we make a list of what we're grateful for about our husbands, and we express at least 3 of them a day, every day. And in my experience, once you get started with that, you find the list of things that you appreciate gets longer and longer. It becomes very easy to do. The same thing happened around here when I decided to focus on what I was grateful for. It can be challenging to speak gratitude when you're feeling so disappointed and scared that you're never going to get the kind of relationship you really want. But in my experience, deciding to focus on what he is doing right goes a long way to making the marriage you dreamed of materialize so that you're enjoying a long and happy romance. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest Crystal's marriage was like a fairy tale right from the beginning. But 10 years in, she realized she was full of resentment and anger and felt only distance from her husband. Nor did she particularly want to be respectful, appreciative, or stop controlling her husband. She wanted him to be respectful and appreciative and to stop controlling her. But she started to experiment anyway, and he mirrored back to her the way she was showing up. And now that deep resentment has left, and they are best friends who laugh together a lot, and she feels deeply loved. Crystal, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, Laura.
So I'm going to ask you an unusual first question. I want to hear about you taking us all the way back to the good old days.
So I had the good fortune of reading your book, The Surrendered Single, about nearly 18 years ago when I was 24 years old. And I just loved your book. I resonated with it straight away so much that it, became like my dating Bible. And I lived in a share house with all my girlfriends, and I would kind of be coaching my friends on your Surrendered Single book. We were all dating and we're all looking for a husband. And it was just a really different way of doing things, I guess, because I've kind of always been very forward. And so it was a more kind of feminine approach. And I followed your book to the dot. Like, I did everything it said, and I made myself do it. And And it was so good because I had all these dates and all these men, and I've never had that before. It really lifted my confidence, and I was dating all these men and enjoying myself and eating dessert and like the whole lot. And it was a really fun time, and all my friends were doing it too. And then we all met our husbands around the same time, and we all got married about within a year of each other because we were all practicing this. And yeah, so then when I met my husband, he was really standout to me out of all the men I was dating. I just knew straight away that I'd marry him. And I think just having those skills of being able to tune in, I remember from that time something about that Surrendered Single book where it's not about does he like you, it's about what do you feel? You know, do you love him? And it was really more tuning into me instead of sometimes I think we can be anxious and hope that they like us, but it was really what do you want and what do you feel? And so that I just knew straight away he was the one for me. So I feel like really things were set up really well from the start because I had that, and I probably got even your Surrendered Wife book, not because I felt like I needed it, just because I was probably interested just to have a general kind of plan to have at the start of our relationship. So that was really just an absolute blessing in disguise because I think it helped me find my soulmate, which, you know, has completely had a huge impact on my life and the happiness in my life and everything. So, yeah, I think that was good fortune. And so it really did start like a fairy tale. And, yeah, and then we got married and had a baby and life got hard.
No, I was going to say the end, right? Got married and lived happily ever after. But how great that you had some knowledge of the skills, the intimacy skills from your experience as being a single woman who was dating and wanting to attract the right man. And you had great success. It sounds like you were incredibly focused and disciplined about applying the skills as you were dating. So I just love hearing about how successful you were with that. So you had a child and life got hard. So now we're into the bad old days, right? So.
Yeah, well, there's kind of a few parts to it. So life got hard, and then I'll just kind of start with that. So I had a baby, got married, but I got sick during my pregnancy. I developed a chronic illness, and then I had a baby, and my baby was not well. And so she had chronic or severe eczema right across her body, except for on her face. And I had to bandage her whole body every 4 hours for nearly a year. And she was just extremely uncomfortable and itchy and suffering. And she didn't sleep. She just screamed and scratched. And we would put her in the big bed in between my husband and I. I'd hold down an arm and a leg on one side, and he'd hold down the other side, and just to stop her from scratching herself or making herself bleed. And it was really exhausting because we didn't sleep. More than anything, it was just really hard because she was suffering and there was no end in sight. And I was powerless. I mean, I could bandage her up, but she was still, you know, he was this baby and she was suffering, and there was no answer to it. This is something we just had to kind of live with. And so going on, and at the same time, I was sick, and people would just say, oh, well, that's normal because you've got this really special needs baby. That's normal for you to not be well. But I was not just exhausted. I was like, I had chronic nausea every day, like on and off all day, chronic fatigue and heart problems, and just I was barely functioning basically. And around the same time, my husband, so in the same month that our baby was born, my husband started his own business. And so he was really absorbed in that and the pressures of that and stressed from that. And I kind of felt like I couldn't, ask for too much. I needed to support him in that. So everything was just a perfect storm, I guess you'd say. And it was just really, really hard. And then one day my baby collapsed in my arms and went pale and floppy, and I thought that it looked like she died basically in my arms. And she had an anaphylactic reaction to my breast milk. And that was like a really traumatic experience to go through, to see her like that, and she recovered. But then I kind of found out that she, had severe anaphylaxis to lots of common foods, milk and eggs, peanuts, like life-threatening allergies. And the advice was to start to control everything, the environment, to keep her safe. And so I became extremely controlling to survive.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah. And I didn't really trust anybody with her, probably not even my husband. Like, he might forget to take the EpiPen, or I just was in this hyper-vigilant state of, I need to keep this baby alive, and also I need to keep myself alive, and I'm getting sicker and the doctors aren't finding anything, so I feel like I'm probably dying. So it was like a hell on earth experience that went on and on. And it was really, really challenging. And I think I kind of turned myself into a soldier. So I didn't feel, there was too much to survive to let myself feel the grief of seeing my baby suffering, and doing all this bandaging all the time. And so I just, I just kind of pushed it all down so that I could just get through the experience. And I just remember that's probably the start when I first started feeling resentment towards my husband, even though I probably wasn't really aware of it at the time. It was just because life was so hard for both of us. And I do remember this time when I had to, because I had different size bandages for her arms and her tummy and her legs, so all these different bandages. I had to be washing and drying them and then rolling them up and having them ready for the next bandage. And I'd cover her in steroid creams and put wet chucks on her and then bandage. It was this whole process that I had to kind of keep on top of while I was sick. And my husband came in and he wanted to give me a lesson on how to, I can't remember if it was on how to roll the bandages or how to organise them into separate baskets, but whatever. I just couldn't take, I took that as a criticism that I'm not doing a good enough job. And I didn't, and I probably didn't even react in anger. I was just so strung out. I was ready to have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
There was just like this building feeling of resentment. And looking back at it, he was probably just trying to help me, because he's good at systems. He was probably just trying to get some organization within this thing. But I was just so run down and stressed that I could not receive any help.
Not one drop.
I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I'd never really been vulnerable before. And I think maybe other women who are more practiced at being vulnerable might have just started crying and asked for a hug. But I didn't do that. I just kept powering through. And that was hard because then it was, I kind of felt like, even though he was there, that we could have been closer, but we weren't because I was too busy surviving the situation.
It's understandable, Crystal. It sounds so challenging. It's so overwhelming. And I really connect with that party that just was so depleted, so thoroughly way past what your nervous system could handle. But it was a life or death situation. And your baby there's nothing more heartbreaking for a mom than to watch her baby suffering every day. It sounds really, really awful. It sounds hard. Wouldn't wish it on anyone.
No, it's horrible. And I know there's heaps of mums out there in the world who deal with this because this is a condition a lot of babies get. So, it was hard. And I remember at the time a nurse saying to me, I think I had to take the baby to hospital for a while because she wasn't sleeping and they were trying to put her through sleep school, which didn't work because she wasn't like other babies. She just scratched. But anyway, I remember a nurse saying to me, "You really need self-care." And it just infuriated me because I thought, you have no idea.
You have no idea. Yeah.
What I go through every day and every night, and there's no end in sight. And she was trying to throw me a life raft there, but I could not hear it.
No.
So deep in survival mode, I couldn't like receive help from anyone. I couldn't. It was just stuck. It was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. It's what a setup, right? Unbelievable setup, because there was no end in sight. There was no rest.
Yep. It was hard. So that was kind of how things started. And that went on for quite a few years, actually. Well, we did, it was probably a year of the whole bandaging thing, but there was years of me being unwell, and eventually I got diagnosed with a condition called POTS, which was a really big relief to get a diagnosis and then know a little bit better how to manage this condition. So life kind of went on. And then maybe fast forward 10 years into the future, and it was as if we'd gotten out of the dark tunnel that went on for so long. And life was starting to get a bit easier. And, like my husband was like more on top of his business, and kids are a bit older. I had another baby as well. And, my daughter still has the anaphylaxis and everything, but just because she's older, it's much easier I don't have to look for, protect a toddler from touching something. Yeah. She's to kind of take care of herself. So things are kind of settled down, but I had this kind of, it's like a hangover, an emotional hangover from all of that stuff in the past. Kind of still, it was still pushed out really. And then, what changed was, I guess my husband started he started finding time for, so let me just go back exactly. Yeah, so he started finding time for sport actually, and because he didn't have to be at work so much, and it was as if I was always waiting for him to finally have time for me and to not put so much time into his business. And so he did finally have time, but the attention wasn't going to me. It was going to all these other things. And he was doing a sport, and it was really good for him. I could see his life was coming back into him. So I felt like I couldn't, even though there was a part of me that was jealous that his attention was going somewhere else, I felt like I had no right to be mad because this was him. So it was more of this pushing down, but feeling just really disconnected from him. And that's right. So I used to have this reoccurring dream every single morning. A dream that I was trying to call him on the mobile phone, and the phone would be ringing, but he wouldn't pick up. And I just could not connect to him. It was this feeling of I can't connect, I want to connect, and I can't connect. It just, and then I'd wake up and I'd say, I had that dream again. I'm trying to connect to you and you won't pick up. And see, that's evidence that you're not connected to me. You don't see me. And so I was just fully blaming him for that disconnection. So it was I just felt kind of lonely, and I felt bad. And he kind of never really knew what to do with that when I would say, you're not seeing me. Just heard it, and kind of there's nothing he could do. So, I just remember just wanting affection. I wanted him to hold my hand and put his arm around me, and just all those little kind of things that we want. And I felt like I wasn't getting that. And I started to think, well, he doesn't love me, because if he loved me, he would be holding my hand. He would be hugging me. If he really loved me, he would do those things, but he obviously doesn't, because he's not doing it. And it's like I was begging him for that. I was saying, well, yeah, it was kind of humiliating to be begging for that kind of attention.
Yeah, I remember.
And I remember saying to him, you're obviously happy in life, but I'm not. I'm unhappy in this. I feel like I'm unhappily married. But I never kind of thought I was going to go anywhere. I just kind of thought, I think I said to him, I'm I guess I'm just going to be unhappy for the rest of my life. And I made the decision that because I didn't want to like leave, or I didn't want to be away, like I just made the decision, I'm just going to be unhappy for the rest of my life. And it's your fault because you don't give me the attention, the affection that I want.
Yeah. Yeah, you laugh now to think about it. But at the time, that was your reality. That's how it felt.
Yeah, it felt
You
really.
had no other choice.
There was a part of me that wanted to escape as well.
Yeah.
Escaping, but then I would think, but if I did escape to somewhere, I would miss everybody. So I felt trapped. I wanted to escape, and yet I didn't know how to fix it except just tell him that he needs to give me attention, and then that would fix everything, or he needs to love me, and that would fix everything.
And it didn't work. Okay. Too bad.
So I said that to him, and he said to me, I would give you more affection, but it's really hard because you put out a really prickly vibe.
Ouch.
Like I didn't even know, and maybe because I was kind of, pushed down my feelings for so long, but I knew I was unhappy, but I didn't know I was resentful, and I didn't know I was putting out that vibe. And because I'm such a nice person,
Yeah.
supportive and always doing the right thing and trying to be positive and like all of that, I couldn't see myself as a resentful person. Not until that moment that he said that was like a massive aha moment that you're the one with the resentment, and I can't reach you because he must have been getting rejected from me because I was resentful, even though I couldn't see it. So that was a big awakening, and that's really the point where I realized, okay, I need to go back to those skills, because I had your book in my drawer for all these years, and every now and then I'd read it, but when I look back now, a lot of it was a surface level understanding of the skills, and I kind of can see how much deeper they go now.
So it was an aha moment, an awakening, but also a slap in the face, I'm pretty sure. Like it must have hurt. It must have felt awful.
Well, it didn't actually feel that bad because there was so much relief in it that there was that I had some power finally to do something, because before that there was nothing where to go. So I didn't care if there was I didn't care that there was blame on me, and I don't mind taking responsibility for things. I'm happy to do that. But so I didn't feel it so much like he was blaming me or putting it back on me, because there was so much relief in, like, it in a way gave me my power back to, I can do something now.
You aren't going to just have to spend the rest of your life in a miserable marriage anymore.
Yeah. Then I went back to, so I think your podcast had maybe only just started at the time. So this was a couple of years ago. I started listening to that, and I started reading your books again. I started getting them on audio. I just kind of every day I was listening to a little bit, and I was listening and practicing. But the main thing for me, like the biggest skill for me really has been self-care, because what I realized was the disconnection, because, there was a lot of disconnection I was talking about earlier, that disconnection that I was blaming him for. So what I realized was that resentment, like I was blaming him for not loving me in my mind. I said, he doesn't love me, he doesn't touch me, blah, blah, blah. It was me that stopped loving him. Like I saw that because of my resentment, my heart had closed, and I wasn't loving him the way I used to. And I was the one who stopped loving him. Like, yeah, that also was kind of a big realization that I didn't have the same amount of love because I was too busy holding on to this resentment. And that disconnection was the disconnection from my own heart, my own soul. And then that was then reflected in my relationship to him.
Wow. What a realization.
Self-care piece for me was absolutely everything, and it still is. Because before I was married and had kids, my whole life was really about my spiritual journey. I'd go and sit with teachers in India, and it was just all that was the focus of my life. And so then when I got married and had kids, that just all went completely under the wayside, and my focus became, looking after them, not looking after me anymore, which is probably a common story. Just look after everybody else. But yeah, to the degree where I was just so sick, I just lost. So I just went straight back into that meditation and following spiritual teachers again, and also doing, all of your stuff as well. Just really immersed myself in that and got my connection back to myself and started hearing myself again. And that part of your teaching, really asking yourself, what do you feel? What do you want? Well, I just kind of thought, geez, I've never really asked myself, what do I feel? Like on a really deep level. So that, for me, has been like a huge healing in learning how to kind of tune into what do I feel and what do I want, and then allow myself to actually feel it. Like that has been a really big step for me, to allow myself to feel after all these years of like suppressing. Like most of my life I've been just a suppressor, and now I'm feeling it more and more, like just feeling whatever comes up and letting that be there, whether it's pain or happiness or whatever, I'm feeling it now. And so I have like completely come alive, particularly since I started doing coach training 12 months ago. So there was the self-care on the spiritual level for me. And then there was a physical level, because I was so, I was still dealing with my illness, and I still am in bed 1 to 2 hours every day. I still deal with symptoms. But so I kind of created self-care for people with illness, and that is and for busy mums, self-care that doesn't take much time or energy. So it's just really integrated into my life so that I can be putting in 20 self-cares a day. So for example, when I put the kids into the car and we drive to school every morning, I'll do deep, slow breathing. And that's one of my self-cares. And that really helped. Especially, it's not so much a thing anymore. My kids are a little bit older, but when they were like in prep and grade 1, the morning rush would be really stressful. And so that deep breathing while I'm driving would just, bring me back. And other self-cares that I still do, that I started back a couple of years ago, I put essential oils in the shower, in the base of the shower, in my wrist, and I infuse my shower every morning and, feel myself come in to my body. And I do an affirmation I do every day. I've been doing this one for a long time. I love you, my heart. So if I'm feeling stressed, or if I'm feeling happy, if I'm feeling whatever, it's just an acknowledgement to myself, because I know I have to keep that connection to myself. That's my number one thing in being happy in my relationship, is that connection. So I love you, my heart. I say to myself if I feel scared. I love you, I just say it silently all through the day. So that's another self-care. Doesn't take any time, but it keeps me connected to myself. And so I just come up with lots of those kind of things. And then I came up with more social ones, like going to a girlfriend's, watching a movie, drinking wine, just everything. And so that whole self-care thing.
Really, I love this so much, because this is so. You're making me cry, because I hear how much self-love you're giving yourself now, and it's just so beautiful. And I just think of the woman where the nurse was saying you need some self-care, and you just could not hear it. And now look at you, right? And these examples are so specific, and they just sound so nourishing. So I just wanted to pause and kind of celebrate that for a moment, because every mom of young children has those pressures, and every woman with chronic illness or other challenges, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe you've got several kids and you're pregnant, whatever it is, right? So these are just great specific examples of how you
and just learning to honor my body, like instead of, because even when I was sick, I pushed myself, and I've been working way too much and managing an illness and all those things, whereas now, these last 2 years, it's all changed. I barely work at all. It's just do a little bit, but I'm mainly in the home and just supporting my family. And when I am in bed in the afternoons, instead of feeling guilty and bad, because I used to feel guilty and bad that I had to sleep, that I wasn't doing enough. Because I come from a dairy farming family where, you know, really hard workers. So it's really hard to be in bed. So now I think to myself, like, you know, I lay down and have that sleep, and I think I'm honoring my body. This is what my body needs. Like,
and therefore honoring your family in a way too, because you're going to show up so much better than the woman that couldn't do any self-care and couldn't connect. Right. So this is, it's just a night and day.
And so my realization has really been that the path to true love is self-love. It all begins with me. And that's in every relationship in my life. If I can be loving myself, loving my heart, I can then be able to do all the things. And I really am happy. Like, all that resentment I had, it all just magically lifted off. And it didn't, you know, it only really was probably a couple of weeks once I started getting back into the skills that everything started shifting. But yeah, initially, you know, with the others, so for me, self-care is the base skill and the one that I always am doing every day. And then there was the rest of the skills. And initially, I really didn't like them. So, you know, I didn't. And, you know, there's a part of me that I just call her the know-it-all, but she's kind of superior. And she's the one who struggles with the skills. So, and she's the one I have to kind of give up every time I do the skills, like gratitude. I have to give up. I kind of give up the superior one to say thank you. It's just a big part of who I am. But I've kind of made peace with her as well. You know, like recognized her, peace with her, so that I can do the skills. So yeah, initially I didn't really like. I wanted him to be the thanking me and appreciating me. I didn't want to have to do that. I wanted him to be respectful, to be apologizing. I wanted him maybe to be more vulnerable. To all the skills, I guess I wanted him to demonstrate first. I didn't really want me to be the one doing it because I already felt like I was good.
Yeah. It's unfair, right? It feels so unfair.
Yeah. But then I know that they work, and so I just do it anyway. And I mean, that's probably the part of my personality that forces myself to do things. But so I just do the skills anyway. And so, yeah, there was things there, you know, like, and, you know, I think it's probably a common feeling where I definitely felt like the parent who knew the right thing to do, because I'm a trained teacher and have a lot of knowledge in that area. And so, yeah, I see myself as the expert on child development. And so I started to see how I was controlling of parenting and, you know, in other things as well, controlling of his work. I would be suggesting that he should put his hourly rate up all the time, and just little things as well, like around the house. Like I would be telling him how to chop the vegetables and how to make an omelette and just all the domestic things. And it's such a relief just to let go and not have to like control those things anymore. And like I have this mantra now that he's a free man, and he is. Like he's free to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants to do it. And I'm free because he's free, because I don't have to. So I'm a free woman too. But we're both now, we're free together. And so there's love and connection. So yeah, the affection and everything came back, you know, when I stopped looking for it and started giving it to myself. And he just really started mirroring everything I started doing, and it kind of, things came back into alignment pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think I probably realised, I mean, it was only a really small moment, that, wow, it really works. One day he was thanking me for doing something around the house. It was like, I can't remember what it was. It was probably nothing, probably just cooking dinner or whatever. And he was thanking me, and I was thinking, this is weird because I now do a lot less and I'm a lot happier, and yet I'm getting all this appreciation. Whereas back when I wanted to be acknowledged, I was working so hard, I wasn't getting it. Now life is easy and I'm getting the appreciation. And it was just in that moment I realized, wow, life doesn't have to be so hard. I don't have to struggle. And I really thought that I did.
Yeah, marriage is full of paradoxes, isn't it? Mysteries in a way. And here you were demonstrating for yourself that it wasn't the hard work. It wasn't that you had to do more to feel that appreciation and therefore love, really. It was doing less. It was doing way less.
Yeah.
It's a great example of what's possible there and how difficult it can be to sort of see behind that veil to get to that piece, to get to where you are now, right? It was very hard to see that from where you were before.
Yeah, really hard. And I think there's we've got ingrained into us a cultural thing. And I know I did from my upbringing that you have to work hard to make things better. That thought doesn't always, that can make you sick, actually.
Yes. Yeah. And marriage is hard work, right? Was that a message that you, right? Marriage is hard work. So if things aren't working, you have to work harder is kind of, And you're a dairy farmer, so you know hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But that wasn't it.
No, it's actually just love yourself and be grateful and, be respectful.
So you were noticing he was more appreciative and you were happier because you were, I love you, my heart. You were delivering that beautiful message to yourself and doing all your other self-care. What else did you start to implement that was different?
For me, I guess a lot of it was just the growing awareness of my controlling ways of all the little things. And so it wasn't actually an external doing, but an internal becoming aware and letting that go. And because I did that, there wasn't the resentment.
Yeah.
And then things just cleared. And it was kind of like from doing nothing, even though it wasn't doing nothing. Internally, it was doing a lot. But externally, it seemed like I was doing nothing.
It almost looked like you were passive, maybe.
Yeah, but it was passive in a different way because I used to be passive in the past, but I was passive with resentment.
Yes.
So I used to say nothing in the past, but it was full of resentment, whereas this time it was, becoming just a growing awareness of wanting to control the way he does everything or just the way he is. Because so he's quite slow and methodical and thorough at the way he does things. And I'm the opposite. I'm fast through everything really quickly. And just accepting that he is who he is. There's so much freedom in letting him be. I feel like actually there's so much magic in that, just letting him be who he is and taking my hands off in a way. So a lot of it has really been in just an internal, I may not look that different from the outside or even the things I say. Although, I definitely do say things like I apologise for disrespecting you imperative. I do say things I didn't used to say. But a lot of it, you might not even see the difference on the outside, but the inside is completely different because the resentment has gone and because I'm aware of my continuous controlling ways and judgmental ways. And I always find even with those things, the self-care is what brings me back if I find I'm judging. And, not just with my husband, like with my girlfriends. If I find I'm judging, so quick to go into judgment about how to be a perfect parent, because that's what I am. Just come back to self-care. I didn't know before how to stop judging. I just didn't know. I just was always right in my mind. And now I know how to stop judging. I just stop and I come back to myself. And that has also been a huge relief to me. And it's made all of my friendships much deeper and better because I don't I'm not judging my girl. And I didn't really want to judge my girlfriends. It's just I didn't know how else to be because I was just such a know-it-all and I know everything and know what they should be doing right. I really did not know. And now it actually was a simple kind of switch and so much more freedom to come back to myself.
It sounds like you have cultivated humility.
I think I'm still working on that.
Yeah. How does superior self feel about this? How does know-it-all feel about this aspect of humility being developed further?
Well, humility is really, I find it's been hard for me it's really hard to develop, but I think that's what I needed. That's what I really needed to learn as well. Like it feels like a cleansing. I actually feel like internally I'm going through this purification process, and I don't want to get into spiritual terms, but I feel like my higher self is starting to, or to just say my best self is starting to be embodied, and my lower self is kind of more still there and it's probably always going to be there, but I just feel like my best self is becoming more embodied and like who I'm supposed to be. So grateful for my time, especially in coach training in the past 12 months, because that has really like accelerated things 1,000-fold. You know, I feel like I've been on this kind of spiritual journey my whole life, but coach training accelerated things 1,000-fold and gave me the practical skills to embody what I wanted to embody. And so, yeah.
So your marriage has become a crucible for your self-development and for this best self to really thrive and become stronger, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I just feel so blessed, I guess, to have what I have. Like my husband really is my best friend, and we do laugh a lot and we talk about philosophy and current affairs, and we talk about when we're going to grow old and, you know, when the kids grow up and kind of planning different things. And, you know, we watch Netflix and hold hands and just all the normal stuff. You know, when my kids are just thriving, like you can tell that they're really from a loving home. They're just thriving academically, socially and creatively. They're quite brilliant. And when we go out for dinner, we'll be the ones at a table just like laughing hysterically, our whole family. Our daughters are now 13 and we're just like laughing and laughing. And I just have these moments of, wow, like sometimes I have this moment of this is heaven on earth. I mean, I still flip back occasionally into the hell, but after, you know, the big hell, I've been through the big hell. Like I've been through the big hell and I know now that life can be so much better. And yeah, just so grateful, Laura, to you and for the skills that I've been able to create that. I'm so, you know, excited to become a coach. Like I really so love that feeling of satisfaction that comes with being a coach. And I love that. I'm kind of addicted to that feeling of the satisfaction that comes when, you know, when you have a good coaching session. So I'm really excited about that future as well.
Absolutely. Well, you've definitely committed yourself with coach training and been very diligent. So I see your passion that comes through loud and clear about being a coach. So along those lines, what is your tip for women who are listening and maybe they are where you were with a sick daughter, with a sick yourself, and they're feeling resentment? What is your tip for them about how to best get started?
I would say if you are struggling or feeling overwhelmed or feeling like you're drowning, that this is your life raft. These skills are your life raft, and you know, you have that choice to reach out and grab it or not. And you know, even just the fact that you're listening to this podcast means that you've already found the skills. So I would say that you're very fortunate in life that you've found these skills. Just like I was very fortunate back at the start with finding this threaded single. You have good luck and you've found the skills. And it's kind of like, I kind of see the skills like gold. It's like you've got gold right there in your hands, and you can either put it on the shelf and never really know how much it's worth, or you can, start to put the skills into practice and then start to discover what it's worth. And actually what it's worth is priceless. Like there's no money that can pay for a happy marriage. Like it actually comes in the practicing of the skills. So, I would say just start by reaching out or even just experimenting with the skills. For me, it was self-care. And so I'd probably say just experiment with that. But also, Laura, you've got this whole community of beautiful, beautiful women, this whole community that is just there to support other women. And so why not reach out in whichever way you can and, make the most of that. And also maybe you're in the place where I was, where you can't, people are offering you that, like that nurse offering the life raft to me. I couldn't hear it because I was so overwhelmed, but maybe you're in that same place and maybe you can just hear it a little bit and, it's really that choice to reach out and start to educate yourself so that you can get out of hell, basically.
Yeah, get out of hell. Well, I think you make a good point. Like, you weren't ready until you were ready. And once you were ready, you really grabbed it with both hands. But I have a theory that I would not have been ready if someone had said to me, Laura, you should, read one of these books that I wrote later. I would say, no, you have no idea, kind of like you were saying. So I think it's just nice to hear for a woman who's feeling so overwhelmed, like she just can't right now, and she's not alone. She's not the only one. You've been there too. So I think there's some comfort in that. So thank you for sharing so authentically about the overwhelm that you were in. What would you say to Crystal from back in those days? If you could tell her what you know now.
I would probably just try to say that life doesn't have to be as hard as what you think it is. And it sounds weird, but I can see now that on some level the survival mode was a choice. Even though I did have real things, I did and I do have an illness and there was real things coming towards me, there was choice in how I responded to those things. And I probably couldn't see that at the time, but I would kind of try and wake myself up to that, that there is a choice in how to respond to the way I relate. And so the skills really help with that, kind of becoming aware the way you relate to everything, every situation, as well as person, as well as yourself. So I'd just be probably trying to get myself back to the skills earlier in the piece, even though, as I said, maybe I just wasn't ready because I felt like I had too much. So, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. It's true. I think it's super difficult when someone's in a very challenging situation like that and feels like they don't have a choice. I can see where it is very hard to see that there are other choices. And I think anyone trying to say so almost sounds smug and superior, right? Like, oh, you have a choice, right? Like, but I love this idea that you would just go back and try to gently give that to yourself.
And I would just go back and I would start loving myself sooner. That was for me the main piece I was missing. So I would start loving myself sooner and listening to myself instead of just putting everything else and everyone else before myself. And it's not that I still don't serve those people, but it's like checking with myself too.
Yes. And
yeah.
I imagine being able to serve them better after you've checked in with Crystal first. Yeah. And it's, it must be very gratifying as a mom to see your children thriving so well and knowing that you're giving them that home court advantage of parents who laugh together and talk about current events and make plans for when they grow old together. So, and did you notice any change in your children from a before and after standpoint with the skills?
I think just the last few years since I've really gotten more into the skills, they have definitely just become thriving. Like they're just very talented in lots of different ways, and they're not like extroverted. They're both quite sensitive souls, but they're just thriving in every area, and it's amazing, creatively, especially. So yeah, but I think they're just happy. And, because I remember we went on this hike once and my daughter was speaking in French and we had to try and, just to pass the time, she'd say something in French and we'd try and work out what she said. And I don't know French, my husband he's trying to learn it. And she was saying things like in French, why are mum and dad so happy? And when she said that, I thought, oh, she really gets it, that we're just so happy. And yeah, they know that we're happy. And so they're happy. And it's just, I think when mum's happy, everyone's happy.
Yeah, your daughter acknowledged you for all that you've done in your family to transform it into what it is now, which sounds like a really safe, happy, wonderful place. And I give you all the credit for that, Crystal.
Thank you.
Well, this has been really remarkable and inspiring to hear your story. Thank you so much for being so authentic and vulnerable with us. I know you're touching a lot of hearts today.
Oh, thank you, Laura. And I'd really love to acknowledge you too, if I may. So, Laura, I just want to acknowledge you for your presence and your humility and your vision. Kind of see you like a humble celebrity who just leads with a lot of grace. And I just want to thank you for your gifts to the world. So the gifts of the skills and then all of your programs and your coach training, which I think is your magical masterpiece and such a gift to the world. And especially in this time of, there's a lot of division and political and all kinds of things going on in the world. And to be able to have the skills or to be able to train coaches to, within relationship coaching, and for me, let's just say, to learn the real meaning of respect in a time where people are, having vaccine choices and like all different things, just to be able to respect everybody's humanity, like that is such a gift. Like that, such a gift. And so, yeah, I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for the gift you give the world in everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate that encouragement. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for your wonderful contribution to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. It's been a pleasure.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that has me rolling my eyes out of my head this week was sent to me by a coach who says, "My husband found this for you. We hope you might find it useful for a future podcast or at least be inspired to keep doing what you're doing." So that's pretty cute that her husband is getting in on the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week submissions. And I love it. Clearly, he recognizes wretched advice when he hears it. And he really nailed it on this one. So thanks to you both for sending this in. I'm so grateful for your love, your contribution to the podcast, and the mission to end world divorce. The misleading advice was from an ad about how to have a good divorce, using mediation to help families move forward in a healthy and hopeful way. Isn't that interesting that there's a healthy and hopeful way to destroy your family? That is news to me. How is that possible? Think about anybody you know who got divorced. And sadly, we all know someone who's divorced. Are the words healthy and hopeful what you'd use to describe any part of what they went through? You could argue that it's healthier and more helpful or more hopeful to go through mediation instead of having lawyers slug it out in court. I guess, could be better than a knockdown, drag out brawl, right? Well, sure. Mediation might be less hurtful and devastating and damaging than lawyering up, but that doesn't mean the divorce is going to be healthy or hopeful. But holding out that illusion for someone who's in a lot of pain in their marriage could certainly give them the false impression that there's a soft way to have a nuclear war with their spouse. But what's even more healthy and hopeful is finding a way to make that marriage last and thrive. And we know that that's not only possible, it's inevitable when a woman gets the right skills, the support of a community, good coaching, and a way to pay it forward. When she gets the 4 pillars of the connection framework, she can make her marriage last and thrive. Now, that's what I think of when I think of a healthy and hopeful approach to marriage. Because the only reason anybody needs mediation is because they've stopped seeing each other as being on the same team. They're afraid the other person is the enemy, and fear brings out the worst in all of us. But what we hear about week after week on this podcast is that all it takes is for one person to choose her faith and to have the intention for her marriage to last and thrive, to create a dramatic change that will truly provide a healthy environment and hope for her family. And for that reason, the advice to have a good divorce using mediation to help families move forward in a healthy and hopeful way is the very, very, very worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share how to get more help from your husband. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I had to rest my voice after I gave a lot of talks last week, and my husband was maybe a little too supportive about that.